chess.com friends. This is Grandmaster Eugene Perlstein, and I am back with some very exciting series on the attacking pawn chains. In today's video, I'm gonna show you a very powerful attacking pawn chain that you can get from many different openings. For instance, in this game, white played the move d4, and after knight f6, knight f3, e6, bishop g5. This variation or this opening is called the Torre attack, and it's usually a very quiet opening, but has a very powerful attacking potential if black is not careful. Now, looking at this position, you may say, well, this is a d4 opening, and if I'm an e4 player, I will never get pawn chain from this opening. But you will be wrong, because I will show you how easy it is to get a French type pawn chain from this opening as well as from the French defense. And I'm sure there are other openings where you're going to get the same exact pawn chain that you will see in this game. So let me just show you the next few moves, and then we're going to compare it to the French defense, and you're going to see what I mean by very powerful attacking pawn chain. So after the following moves, d5, black is fighting for the center, white simply plays a quiet move e3, black challenges the d pawn with c5, but white keeps the pawn structure intact with the move c3. Well, after knight c6, knight bd2, this is a very common position from the Torre attack, and here in this game that I'm about to show you, it's a hypothetical game. Let's say black plays this move c4. On one hand, black is building up this beautiful looking pawn chain from f7 to c4. Black also takes away the d3 square from the bishop. And of course, black is gaining space, so he can fight on the queen side with b5, a5, b4. So all of this is logical, but once you understand the key concepts from this video, you will see that c4 is actually not very good move. Now, white reacts in the best possible way. e4, x-clamp. Black takes away the tension from the d4 pawn, and white uses the pin. And keep in mind, if pawn takes, knight takes, this is going to be great for white because the c pawn is really weak. So black plays reasonable looking move bishop e7 to break the pin, and after e5, knight has to go somewhere. Bishop takes, knight takes. This is the theme of today's lecture. White has built this powerful b2, e5 pawn chain. This is a very powerful attacking pawn chain, and if you don't know how to play with this type of position, this video is going to teach you with the very simple plan that almost works like 100% of the time if black is not careful. So this b2, e5 pawn chain versus this f7, c4 pawn chain would happen from many different openings. And let's just go back and see how we can get the same type of pawn chain from an opening called the French defense. So e4, e6, d4, d5, white plays e5, c5, c3. Guess what? Very similar pawn chain, and if black plays this move c4, it's going to be exactly the same, and the only difference is that the dark square bishops are still on the board. So you see how important it is to learn pawn chains in chess. Now, of course, there are variations of this pawn chain from other openings. For instance, e4, c6, d4, d5. This is the Caro-Kann. White plays e5. Eventually, white plays c3 and builds this pawn chain. Unlike the French defense, though, in the Caro-Kann, the bishop usually gets out, followed by e6. So you don't have that bad bishop. I'm not going to go through every opening and show you various pawn chains. Instead, I will refer you to a very good video by Danny Range called Pawn Structures 101, where Denny goes into great detail, showing all the various possibilities, all the pawn structures from many openings. Instead, let's go back to our sample game and just walk through the process of how to use the powerful pawn chain to get really strong attack. So after black plays c4, unties white hand in the center, e4 very strong move, bishop e7, e5, knight e7 takes, bishop e2. Believe it or not, this position is already very, very dangerous for black. You may wonder, oh really? How so? It looks like both sides are finishing their development, and after black castles, black's king looks relatively safe. I should tell you that this move castles is not only a really bad move, but the concept is completely wrong. Black is castling exactly where white's attack is going to take place. You see that arrow? It points to the king side. White is going to bring all his forces over to the king side. White has a lot of space over there, and black's king is going to have a very tough time defending himself. As a matter of fact, I think it would have been more prudent for black to try to get the king over to the queen side. Even though it's not easy, you got to get the bishop out, the queen out, and then castle. But nevertheless, black has more space on the queen side and less likely to get checkmated with a deadly attack. So keep this in mind for the future when you're defending against a powerful pawn chain or when you're attacking. So black simply castles, doesn't really sense any danger, and white castles as well. So the first thing about pawn chains you have learned called the base of the pawn chain. So even though this is the true base of the pawn chain and so is f7 pawn, it's really hard to attack the base with the pawns. Usually you attack the pawn next to the base, which in our case, black is going to try to go for b5, a5, b4, so it's the c3 pawn, and white in turn has two attacking plans. White can go for f4, g4, f5, attacking the base e6, but the plan that I prefer is completely different. I prefer to attack the king with the pieces. So the plan for white would be to play rook e1, transfer the knight to f1, g3. Knight is going to play a key role in the attack, and then most important plan of all is to transfer the bishop to d1, c2, where the bishop is going to be playing a key role on the long b1, h7 diagonal. This is extremely, extremely powerful. And one most important thing about these types of positions, keep in mind, without the dark square bishops, black really has a hard time defending those dark squares, especially if he ever plays this move g6 to try to stop the power of that bishop. Also, I should point out that this bishop has a bad reputation. It's called the French bishop, meaning that it's always locked behind these pawns. So it's basically a dead piece. Black is almost playing down the piece. I think that black should really try to play f6 as early as possible just to get some space. If you don't do that, you're going to get under very serious attack, as you will see in this game. So let's see what happens next. So black plays a logical move b5, with the idea to try to possibly expand on the queen side, and white follows up with the plan I showed you, rook e1. Knight f5, I don't really like that move. Black is playing without any concrete plan. Knight f5 has no threats. And this is kind of the general trend of this game, where black has absolutely no idea that he's in serious danger. So knight f1, very simple logical chess. Bishop b7. It's again one of those moves. Yes, you can say the bishop is developed, the rooks and the queen are connected, but in reality, this bishop is completely dead. The pawn on d5 is blocking. So knight g3, good move. Knight takes knight. On one hand, you may say, well, Black simply doubles white's pawns, but in reality, opening of the h file is once again very deadly for black. This position is extremely dangerous if black doesn't really sense the danger at all and falls apart quickly. So a5, well, finally black is getting around to getting the counterplay on the queen side. Queen d2, very methodical, bringing the bishop over, stopping b4 for the time being. Rook e8. Black realizes that white may transfer the bishop over. This is his weakness. So this is a prophylactic move with the idea to bring the knight over to f8. White executes his plan. Knight goes to f8, bishop c2. And now you may wonder, all right, white did everything right, but how am I going to break through? The pawn is well defended. And this is the next stage of the attack. Because white has huge space advantage on the king side, all you have to do is bring your pieces to the h file. So after the move knight g6, can you go ahead and figure out white's plan? What should white do next? How can white continue the attack? If you need more time, go ahead and pause the video. And I already gave you a little hint a little earlier, h file. So the plan is the following: g4 followed by g3, king g2, and rook h1. This very simple plan is deadly. Once the rook gets on the h file, black's possession is pretty much hopeless. And you're going to see what happens next. So white does play g4. Black played this move a4, which again shows me that black has absolutely no clue how to play against pawn chains. Obviously, you want to go for b4 plan, not a4. So black should have played queen b6. But in reality, white can ignore this, followed by g3, b4, king g2. The opening of the b file is really not going to give black any dividends. And if black plays b3, white can obviously simply take and drop back to b1. Why b1? Because you don't really want to trade this beautiful bishop for this bishop on a6. So once the bishop drops back to b1, the attack is still quite strong, and this pawn is extremely weak. So let's go back and see what happens after black played the move a4. So clearly black doesn't understand. You're not supposed to attack the very base of the pawn chain. You're supposed to attack this guy. So now white says, I'm going to stop your counterplay once and for all. a3. Very simple move. b4 is never an option. And black's counterplay on the queen side is dead. The bishop is completely paralyzed. And this is a completely winning position for white. White just has to execute the plan that I showed you earlier, and black has absolutely no defense. So let's see what happens next. Bishop c6, g3, queen d7, king g2. Very simple chess. Knight e7. So black already senses something's wrong, but he's already a little bit too late. He could also try to hang on and play knight f8, but eventually white can double up on the h file, and then h7 is really weak. If you ever play h6, g5 opens the h file. Black has no way of preventing the attack. So knight e7, rook h1, h6. Again, the idea is trying to lock the h file up, g5. And here black tries the last resort with this move knight f5. If white is not careful and white takes the pawn after g6, there's a chance black may survive this game. Because h7 check, king h8, black uses white's pawn as a shield, defensive shield, and now whenever the queen goes to, let's say, g5 or h6, the queen's going to go to e7, and black tries to go for an endgame. Probably still seriously worse, but at least he's not getting checkmate. If we go back to this key position, instead of taking the pawn on h6, keep in mind With this beautiful pawn chain, white has all the time in the world to set up his attack. So I like this move g4 exclamation. The knight has to retreat, and now you take the pawn. The knight on e7 takes the key square away from the queen. And remember how much earlier in the game black traded those dark square bishops? Now he's gonna pay the price. Black played g6 with the idea to lock up that diagonal. Obviously, if pawn takes, queen takes, there is simply no defense against various checkmating threats. For instance, queen h8 checkmate. White also can take with the rook. With a deadly attack, the king is completely wide open. So black tried g6 just to lock things up, but white is completely winning. h7 check, king h8, queen g5, and there is absolutely no defense against queen f6 mate. Wow, what a game. Black fell apart really, really quickly. So let us summarize the key moments. What went wrong for black? It all started in the opening when black played this move c4. This move c4 is not the right way to handle this position. Instead, black should keep tension by playing either bishop e7 or b6, because allowing white to unleash with e4, e5 is really bad news. So that was the first serious mistake of the game. And after that, I would say that after the bishop e2 move, white's plan is quite obvious to attack on the king side. Black did not understand the danger, and black castled right into the attack. It's the most natural move in this position, yet long term, black's king is gonna get exposed. So this is, I think, another critical moment of the game. Instead, black should either keep the king in the center or castle the other way, castle queenside somehow, maybe b6 or b5, bishop b7. And white, of course, can undermine those pawns of b3, a4, still can get a powerful attack. But at least black can try to use the pieces to hold off the attack, because these knights and the bishops are not going to bother the king, black's king, on the queen side. So you see, this move c4 earlier and this move castles allowed white to build the beautiful attack. So now let's summarize white's key plans. Well, the first plan is obvious. You want to build the b2 e5 pawn chain. Trading dark square bishops is also important, because whenever black plays g6, black's king is weakened. And then the rest is easy. You bring the knight to g3, bishop on c2, and then the attack is deadly. And remember, the key point was when black traded on g3, it allowed white to execute g4, g3, king g2, and rook h1, and after that, there is no defense. Even if you're Gary Kasparov or Magnus Carlsen's black, once white gets that powerful attack going, there is really no defense. So I hope you learned the key concept, and we're going to talk about different type of pawn chains, but the concept here is the same. When you're attacking, you have to keep in mind pawn chains are your friends, and b2 e5 pawn chain is extremely, extremely important against all sorts of openings, such as French defense, Caro-Kann, or as we got here, a Torre attack. White always gets very powerful attacks. Thank you very much. This was Grandmaster Eugene Perlstein.